The credit card bill arrived on a Tuesday morning while Mom was at her prayer group meeting. I almost threw it away, assuming it was another piece of junk mail, until I saw my name printed in bold letters across the top. Lena Mitchell. Account holder since March 15th. Current balance, $12,847,000.29. I was 15 years old. I'd never owned a credit card in my life. My hands shook as I tore open the envelope, scanning page after page of charges. Designer handbags from Nordstrom, a weekend at the Ritz-Carlton, jewelry from Tiffany & Co. Someone had been living like royalty on my credit, and I had no idea who. But even as my brain tried to process the impossibility of it, something deeper, something I'd been ignoring for years, whispered the truth I didn't want to hear. I knew exactly who. The signs had always been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. When I was 12, I'd saved birthday money and allowance for 8 months to buy a guitar. I'd wanted to join the school music program, and Mom had said we couldn't afford to rent one, so I'd worked for it myself. Babysitting, yard work, every dollar carefully counted and hidden in an envelope under my mattress. The day I finally had enough, the envelope was gone. "Mom," I'd asked, trying to keep my voice steady, "have you seen an envelope from my room? It had money in it." She'd barely looked up from her coffee. "Oh, honey, I had to borrow that. The electric bill was overdue. Don't worry, I'll pay you back." She never did, and when I brought it up a month later, she'd gotten this wounded look on her face. "Lena, I'm doing my best to keep this family afloat after your father left. Do you know how hard that is? How much I sacrifice every day, and you're worried about a guitar." I'd felt guilty for even asking. I never joined the music program. At 13, I'd won a writing competition. The prize was $500 and a chance to attend a young writers' conference in Seattle. I'd been so excited. My English teacher said I had real talent, that this could open doors for me. Mom had been proud too. She'd shown everyone at church the certificate, posted about it on Facebook, told everyone what an accomplished daughter she had. The conference was 3 months away. The registration fee was $350. 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave, Mom sat me down with her concerned face on, the one that made her look like a Renaissance painting of maternal sacrifice. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about Seattle." My stomach dropped. "What about it?" "Well, your brother needs braces. The orthodontist says if we don't get them now, his teeth will be permanently damaged, and the insurance doesn't cover it all." She'd reached out to squeeze my hand. "I know how much this conference means to you, but Danny's medical needs have to come first. You understand that, right?" I'd looked at her face, so earnest, so caring, and nodded. Because what else could I do? Danny did need braces. I wasn't a monster who'd put a conference above my brother's health. She'd used the prize money for the orthodontist payment. Except 6 months later, Danny still didn't have braces. When I asked about it, Mom got irritated. "These things take time, Lena. There's a waiting list. Why are you always questioning me?" I'd learned to stop asking questions. At 14, I'd been accepted into a competitive summer program for advanced students. Full scholarship. It wouldn't cost us anything except transportation. 2 weeks of studying creative writing with published authors, other kids who loved books as much as I did. Mom had said no immediately. "You're needed here," she'd said. "I can't manage Danny and the house and all my volunteer work by myself. You know I depend on you." "But it's only 2 weeks." "Lena," her voice had gone cold. "I've given up everything for you and your brother, my career, my dreams. My whole life revolves around being your mother, and you can't give me 2 weeks. You can't help me when I need you." I'd stayed home that summer. I'd watched Danny while Mom went to her prayer groups and volunteering and church committees. I'd cooked dinners and done laundry and cleaned the house while she was out being the perfect community pillar everyone loved. The published authors sent me a lovely rejection letter the next year. They'd hoped to see me apply again, but I'd aged out of the program. These memories flickered through my mind as I stared at the credit card bill with my name on it. All those times she'd taken from me. All those times she'd made me feel selfish for wanting anything. All those times she'd used guilt and sacrifice and family obligation to make me give up pieces of myself. And the whole time, she'd been stealing. Not just my money, my future, my identity, everything I was and everything I could become. The guitar I'd saved for, the conference I'd given up, the summer program I'd sacrificed. She'd taken all of it and made me feel guilty for wanting it in the first place. I felt something sharp and cold crystallize in my chest. Not sadness, not even anger yet. Just clarity. "Lena, sweetheart, I'm home." Mom's voice drifted up from downstairs, that same warm, cheerful tone she used when greeting everyone at church. The voice that made neighbors stop her on the street to ask for advice. The voice that convinced the entire community she was a saint. I shoved the bill under my mattress and went downstairs, studying her face for any sign of guilt or recognition. Caroline Mitchell stood in our kitchen, still glowing from her morning of volunteering at the food bank, her graying hair perfectly styled, her cross necklace catching the afternoon light. "How was school today?" she asked, pulling groceries from reusable bags with the church logo printed on them. I watched her unpack organic produce, the expensive kind she always insisted we needed despite claiming we couldn't afford my guitar, my conference, my summer program. "Fine," I said, watching her movements carefully. "Mom, have you ever received any mail addressed to me, like official documents or bills?" She paused for just a fraction of a second while arranging apples in a bowl. "What kind of bills would you be receiving, honey? You're 15. The casualness of her response sent ice through my veins. She wasn't surprised by the question. She wasn't confused or concerned that someone might be stealing my identity. She was deflecting. Just like she'd deflected when I asked about my missing savings. Just like she deflected when I asked about Danny's braces. Just like she always did when I questioned anything. "I don't know, maybe something got mixed up at school or with insurance." I kept my voice light, curious rather than accusatory. "It's just that Sarah Chen mentioned getting something weird in the mail once." "Oh, you know how these companies mess up their mailing lists," Mom said. Pulling out a carton of organic milk, $6 a gallon, I knew, because I'd seen the receipts she left lying around. "I wouldn't worry about it unless you see anything else unusual." But I had seen something else unusual. 3 weeks earlier, a debt collection notice had arrived addressed to me. Mom had intercepted it before I could read it completely, claiming it was obviously a mistake and that she'd handle it. At the time, I'd been grateful for her protection. Now I realized she'd been protecting herself, not me. Just like always. "Mom," I heard myself say, "remember that writing conference, the one in Seattle?" She looked up, confused by the change of subject. "Of course, that was such an honor for you. You said you used the prize money for Danny's braces." A slight tightening around her eyes. "Yes, why are you bringing this up now?" "He still doesn't have braces." "Lena, I don't appreciate this interrogation. I'm your mother, not someone you get to cross-examine." "Where did the money go?" "I told you, the orthodontist." "Danny still doesn't have braces, Mom. It's been over a year. Where did the money actually go?" She set down the milk with careful precision. "I don't like your tone. And I don't like being lied to." Mom's face transformed, not into anger, but into that wounded, martyred expression she always used when I pushed back. "After everything I've done for you, all the sacrifices I've made, and this is how you talk to me, with suspicion and accusation." 2 months ago, that look would have made me back down, made me apologize, made me feel like the villain for questioning her. Now, with a credit card bill under my mattress showing $12,000 in charges I never made, it just made me tired. "I need to do homework," I said, and went upstairs before she could turn this into another lecture about gratitude and sacrifice and how hard it was to be a single mother. That night, I lay in bed staring at the credit card statement. $12,000 in purchases I'd never made, accounts opened with my social security number, my identity stolen by someone who had complete access to my personal information. someone who lived in my house, someone who'd been stealing from me in small ways for years, and I'd been too guilty and too trained to see it. The realization didn't hit me like a physical blow. It settled over me like a heavy blanket, suffocating and inescapable. My mother, the woman everyone in town looked up to, the one who organized charity drives and baked cookies for church fundraisers, hadn't just stolen my money. She'd stolen my trust, my dreams, my ability to want things without feeling guilty. She'd trained me to sacrifice everything so she could take everything, and she'd made me thank her for it. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Something inside me had gone very cold and very still. Instead, I got up quietly and walked to our computer room down the hall. If Mom could live a double life, I could learn to do the same. The computer was password protected, but I'd watched Mom type it in dozens of times. Blessed 2015. The same password she used for everything because she wasn't nearly as careful as she thought she was. Her email inbox told the story I'd been afraid to acknowledge. Confirmations for credit card applications filed in my name. Correspondence with online lenders about loans secured using my social security number. Email chains discussing the best ways to establish credit history for minors. But it wasn't just me. There were applications in my 8-year-old brother Danny's name too. Investment accounts opened with forged signatures. Even correspondence about refinancing our house using Danny's future earning potential as collateral. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was systematically destroying both of her children's financial futures before we were old enough to understand what was happening. And then I found the emails about my writing conference. She hadn't used the money for Danny's braces. She'd used it for a weekend at a spa resort. Much needed self-care after years of sacrifice, she'd written to someone named Rebecca. I deserve this. I stared at that email for a long time. I'd given up that conference for Danny. I'd felt guilty for even being disappointed. I'd told myself I was being a good sister, a good daughter, putting family first. And she'd gotten a massage and a facial and a luxury hotel room. With my prize money. While telling me I was selfish for wanting to go. That's when something inside me broke. Not broke like shattered, broke like a chain snapping. Like something that had been holding me back suddenly letting go. I downloaded everything. Every email, every document, every piece of evidence. I created encrypted folders and backed up files to 3 different cloud services. If Mom could be methodical about destroying our lives, I could be methodical about documenting it. But it wasn't just about documentation anymore. It wasn't just about protecting Danny and myself. I wanted her to hurt the way she'd hurt me. I wanted everyone to see what she really was. I wanted to take away everything she'd built on our backs. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a different person. During the day, I played the role of the obedient 15-year-old daughter. I attended school, did my homework, helped with dinner, hugged Mom goodnight. But every night after she went to sleep, I became something else entirely. I learned about identity theft laws. I researched financial fraud penalties. I studied computer security and discovered that Mom's digital footprint was laughably easy to trace. She used the same password for everything, never cleared her browser history, and left herself logged into accounts for days at a time. Within a week, I had access to her bank records, her email accounts, her credit card statements, even her text messages. The scope of her crimes was breathtaking. She hadn't just stolen from Danny and me. She'd been embezzling money from church fundraisers for 3 years. She'd opened credit lines in the names of elderly neighbors who'd trusted her with their personal information. She'd even stolen money from her own sister's cancer treatment fund. My mother wasn't just a thief. She was a predator who specialized in targeting the people who trusted her most. The worst part was discovering how she talked about us in her private messages. Danny and I weren't her children in those conversations. We were assets to be leveraged, credit histories to be exploited, future earning potential to be borrowed against. She discussed our college funds the same way someone might discuss selling furniture to pay rent. In one message to Rebecca, she'd written, "Lena's getting suspicious about the conference money. Need to shut that down before she starts questioning other things. Thinking about sending her on a guilt trip about how much I've sacrificed. That usually works. That usually works. Like I was a problem to be managed. An obstacle to overcome. A tool to be manipulated. I read that message 3 times, and each time I felt colder, more certain. She didn't see me as her daughter. She saw me as an inconvenience who occasionally interfered with her theft operation. I should have felt heartbroken. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt something cold and sharp settling in my chest. Something that felt like clarity. But underneath that clarity was something else, something that scared me a little. A burning, consuming rage that wanted to see her destroyed. Not just stopped, not just exposed, completely and utterly ruined. I knew that feeling was dangerous. I knew it made me someone I'd never wanted to be. But I also knew I didn't care. She'd made me feel guilty for wanting a guitar, for wanting to attend a conference, for wanting anything at all. Now I wanted something very specific. I wanted to watch her lose everything. And I was going to make sure she did. The worst discovery came during the 2nd week. I was digging through old emails, looking for more evidence of theft, when I found a folder labeled Emergency Fund. Curious, I opened it. It was my college fund, or rather, what was left of it. Dad had set it up before he left when I was 10. He'd put in $15,000, money from his father's estate, meant specifically for my education. Mom had always told me it was safe, growing with interest, waiting for when I needed it. She'd drained it 2 years ago. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the email she'd sent to Rebecca. Just liquidated Lena's college fund. She'll never know. She's too young to understand financial accounts anyway. By the time she's ready for college, I'll just tell her there never was much money to begin with. She'll believe me. She always does. I sat at the computer, staring at those words until they blurred. She'll believe me. She always does. She wasn't just stealing from me. She was counting on my trust, banking on my loyalty, using my love for her as a weapon against me. And she was right. I had always believed her, even when things didn't add up, even when my instincts told me something was wrong. I'd pushed down my doubts because questioning her felt like betrayal. I'd been so well trained. I thought about all the times she'd made me feel guilty for wanting things, all the times she'd used sacrifice as a weapon, all the times she'd convinced me that my needs were selfish and her needs were survival. She'd been gaslighting me for years, and I'd been too loyal to see it. That night, I made a decision, not just to expose her crimes, to destroy her so completely that she'd never be able to rebuild, to take away her reputation, her community, her standing, everything she'd valued more than her own children. I wanted her to feel what I'd felt all those times she'd taken my dreams and called it sacrifice. I wanted her to lose everything. And I was going to make sure the whole town watched it happen. Mom thought she was untouchable because everyone loved her. The entire community saw her as the perfect Christian mother, the woman who never missed a volunteer opportunity, who always had a casserole ready for families in crisis. She'd built her reputation so carefully that no one would ever believe she was capable of the things I'd discovered. But reputations, I realized, were fragile things, and I had the tools to shatter hers completely. The plan came to me during Sunday service 3 weeks later. I sat beside Mom in our usual pew, listening to Pastor Williams discuss the importance of honesty and stewardship, watching Mom nod along with practiced sincerity. She even took notes, her expression perfectly reflecting someone deeply moved by the message about financial integrity. I watched her perform, because that's what it was, a performance. The caring nods, the thoughtful notes, the way she dabbed at her eyes during the prayer like she was so moved by the call to righteousness. She was good. She'd probably been performing so long she didn't even know she was doing it anymore. But I knew. I saw her now. Saw the calculation behind every caring gesture, saw the manipulation in every martyred sigh. After service, Mom lingered in the fellowship hall, discussing plans for the annual charity auction with Mrs. Henderson, the church treasurer. "Caroline, we're so blessed to have you organizing this," Mrs. Henderson gushed. "You have such a gift for bringing the community together for worthy causes." "It's my pleasure," Mom replied, her voice warm with false humility. "When we work together, we can accomplish such wonderful things for families in need." I listened to her talk about helping families in need while knowing she'd stolen $12,000 from those same families over the past year. Knowing she'd stolen my college fund and used the money to buy herself luxury vacations. Knowing she'd traded my summer program for a new wardrobe. The hypocrisy was suffocating. But more than that, I watched Mrs. Henderson look at my mother with such trust, such admiration, and I knew exactly how that felt. I'd looked at her the same way once, before I learned that everything she said was a lie designed to make theft easier. Mrs. Henderson had grandchildren. Did Mom have access to their information too? How many other people in this room had trusted her with details that she'd already weaponized or would weaponize soon? That's when I knew exactly how this had to end. "Mom," I said, approaching their conversation with my most innocent smile. "Mrs. Henderson, I was wondering if I could help with the auction presentation. Maybe help with the technology side. I've been learning about slideshow software in school." Mom beamed with pride. Lena's always been so responsible about helping with church activities. The word responsible almost made me laugh. Responsible. Like I was choosing to help instead of being guilted and manipulated into giving up everything I wanted. "That would be wonderful, dear," Mrs. Henderson said. "Caroline was just saying she could use help with the computer presentation." "I'd love to create something really special," I said, looking directly at Mom. "Something that shows everyone exactly how their donations are being used. Really transparent, you know? People love seeing where their money goes." Mom's smile flickered for just an instant, so briefly that Mrs. Henderson didn't notice. But I saw it. The tiny moment of uncertainty, the flash of something that might have been fear. "Good, she should be afraid." "That sounds perfect, sweetheart," Mom said. "We'll work on it together this week." The charity auction was scheduled for Friday evening, 4 weeks away. 4 weeks to prepare a presentation that would expose every crime Mom had committed. 4 weeks to make sure the evidence was so overwhelming that no one could deny it or explain it away. 4 weeks to destroy the woman who tried to destroy me and Danny before we were old enough to protect ourselves. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. But that night, lying in bed, I cried for the first time since I'd found the credit card bill. Not because I felt guilty about what I was going to do. I didn't. I cried because the woman I was about to destroy was the same woman who'd stayed up with me when I had the flu in 3rd grade. Who'd fought with my school to get me into advanced classes. Who'd taught me that doing the right thing mattered more than being popular. Except she'd never really taught me that, had she? She just performed the role of a mother who believed those things. The real woman underneath had been teaching me something else entirely. That stealing from the people who trust you is acceptable if you can convince them they're selfish for wanting what you're taking. She taught me to value integrity while stealing from everyone who trusted her. She taught me to be selfless while taking everything I had. She taught me that love was conditional on my willingness to sacrifice anything she decided she wanted more. The contradiction was something I'd have to carry for the rest of my life. But first, I was going to make sure she carried the consequences of her choices. The presentation took me 3 weeks to create, but not the one Mom thought I was making. While she reviewed my cheerful slides about community giving and fundraising success stories, I was building something entirely different on my personal laptop. I called it Financial Stewardship, a case study in trust and betrayal. Every slide was devastating. Bank transfer records showing money flowing from the church building fund into Mom's personal account. Credit applications filed in the names of church members who'd never authorized them. Screenshots of text messages where Mom bragged about her foolproof system for generating extra income. I included the email about my conference money, the one where she'd laughed about using it for a spa weekend while I felt guilty for wanting to attend. I wanted everyone to see exactly what kind of person did this. Someone who could take a 15-year-old's prize money, use it for luxury, and then make that child feel selfish for being disappointed. I included financial records showing Danny's and my stolen identities, but I made sure to black out our personal information. This wasn't about humiliating us. This was about exposing her. I included the college fund emails, the ones where she'd calculated how long she could lie to me about it, where she'd written, "She'll believe me. She always does." I wanted everyone to see those words. I wanted them to understand that this wasn't just theft. It was calculated, deliberate manipulation of a child's trust. The final slide was the most brutal, a side-by-side comparison of Mom's public image and her private crimes. On one side, photos of her volunteering at the food bank, teaching Sunday school, organizing charity drives. On the other side, bank statements showing her stealing from every single cause she'd publicly supported. I titled it, "The Wolf in Shepherd's Clothing." I knew it would destroy her. I knew it would humiliate her in front of everyone who'd ever admired her. I knew it would turn her life to ashes. That was exactly what I wanted. 3 days before the auction, Mom asked to review our presentation one more time. "I want to make sure everything flows perfectly," she said, settling beside me on the couch with a cup of coffee. Expensive coffee, I noticed, the kind she claimed we couldn't afford. "This is such an important fundraiser for the community." I opened my laptop and pulled up the decoy presentation, the one filled with cheerful photos and inspiring statistics about our church's charitable work. "It looks wonderful, sweetheart," Mom said, scrolling through slides about food bank donations and mission trip funding. "You've really captured the heart of what we do here." "Thanks, Mom. I wanted to show everyone how blessed we are to have such generous, trustworthy leaders." She squeezed my shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, Lena. You've grown into such a thoughtful young woman." I looked at her face, still searching for some sign of guilt or regret, but there was nothing. She genuinely believed she was a good person, that her crimes were somehow justified, that stealing from children and elderly neighbors was acceptable because she deserved the lifestyle those crimes afforded her. Or maybe she'd just gotten so good at lying that she'd started believing her own performance. "Mom," I said, "do you remember when I saved for that guitar?" She looked surprised. "That was years ago, honey." "You took the money. For the electric bill, you said." "I needed it," she said simply. "We needed electricity." "Did we? Or did you just want it for something else, and the electric bill was a convenient excuse?" Her face tightened. "Lena, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but this attitude needs to stop. I'm your mother. I've sacrificed everything for you and Danny. Everything I've done has been to keep this family together." "Everything?" I asked softly. "Yes, everything." She believed it. She actually believed it. I felt the last thread of doubt snap inside me. "The presentation looks great," I said. "Everyone's going to be so surprised." "They certainly will," Mom agreed, completely missing the edge in my voice. "This will be our best fundraiser yet." Our best, like we were a team, like I was complicit in her performance. After she went upstairs, I opened the real presentation one more time, looked at all the evidence I'd compiled, all the proof of her betrayal. My hands were shaking, but not with fear, with anticipation. In 4 days, everyone would see what I'd seen. Everyone would know what I knew. And my mother's perfect reputation would burn to ashes. Friday evening arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made everyone want to gather together. The church fellowship hall buzzed with conversation as nearly 200 people filled the folding chairs arranged in neat rows. Mom had outdone herself with the decorations, creating an atmosphere of warmth and community spirit. I sat in the front row beside Danny, watching Mom work the room like the seasoned performer she was. She hugged elderly church members, complimented young mothers on their children, and made everyone feel like her personal friend. Her reputation for kindness and generosity had drawn the largest crowd in the auction's 15-year history. Danny tugged on my sleeve. "Are you nervous about your presentation?" "A little," I said, which wasn't a lie. My hands were trembling, my heart racing. But it wasn't stage fright. It was the terrible certainty of knowing that in 10 minutes I was going to detonate a bomb that would destroy our family completely. "You'll do great," Danny said, giving me his gap-toothed smile. "You always do." I squeezed his hand, wondering if he'd still smile at me like that when this was over. If he'd understand why I'd done it, or if he'd hate me for taking away the only mother he'd ever known, even if that mother was a carefully constructed lie. But then I thought about the accounts she'd opened in his name. The future she was destroying for him the same way she'd destroyed mine. The years of guilt and manipulation that would come if I didn't stop this now. I was protecting him, even if he couldn't see it yet. Even if it hurt. Pastor Williams introduced her with glowing praise. Caroline Mitchell embodies everything we value about Christian stewardship. Her dedication to our community and her transparent handling of our charitable funds has been a blessing to us all. The word transparent almost made me laugh, or scream, I wasn't sure which. Mom approached the podium with practiced humility, her smile radiant in the warm lighting. She looked like everything a church leader should be, devoted, trustworthy, selfless. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying easily across the hushed room. "Your generosity over the past year has touched so many lives. Tonight, I want to show you exactly how your donations have made a difference." She clicked the remote to begin the presentation, her confidence absolute. The projector hummed to life, and the first slide appeared on the large screen behind her. But it wasn't the slide she was expecting. Instead of our cheerful community photos, the screen displayed a stark black background with white text. "Financial Stewardship, a case study in trust and betrayal." Mom's smile faltered. She clicked the remote again, probably thinking she'd accidentally loaded the wrong file. The second slide appeared, "When those we trust become predators." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Mom's face went pale as she fumbled with the remote, clicking frantically. But every slide that appeared made things worse. Bank records showing money stolen from the church building fund. Credit applications filed under forged signatures. Screenshots of text messages discussing her foolproof system for stealing from charity accounts. The room erupted in gasps and shocked whispers. I watched faces in the crowd transform from confusion to horror to rage as they realized what they were seeing. Mrs. Patterson, whose arthritis medication fund Mom had raided. The Williams family, whose mission trip donations had disappeared into Mom's personal account. The Johnsons, who'd trusted Mom with their elderly father's information and discovered fraudulent accounts opened in his name. Mom stood frozen at the podium, the remote hanging limply in her hand. The evidence continued to scroll across the screen in methodical detail, each slide more damning than the last. Then came the slide I'd added specially, the one about me. The screen showed the email where she'd described using my conference prize money for a spa weekend, where she'd written about sending me on a guilt trip to keep me from asking questions, where she'd said she'll believe me. She always does. I watched her read those words on the screen, watched her realize that I'd seen them, that I knew exactly what she'd done, that I'd known for weeks and let her think she was safe. "Caroline," Pastor Williams called from the crowd, his voice tight with shock. "Caroline, what is this?" Mom finally found her voice, though it came out as a croak. "This isn't. Someone must have hacked our presentation. This is fake information designed to." But her protests were drowned out by angry voices as people recognized their own stolen information on the screen. The evidence was too detailed, too specific to be fake. Bank account numbers matched. Signatures were clearly forged but identifiable. Text message screenshots included timestamps and phone numbers people could verify. The final slide appeared, and silence fell over the room like a weight. It showed a photograph of Mom from just 2 hours earlier, hugging Mrs. Chen while accepting her donation check for the children's Christmas fund. Beside it was a screenshot from Mom's phone, a text message to someone named Rebecca. "Just got another $500 from the Chen family. These people are so trusting it's almost too easy." Mom's legs buckled. She grabbed the podium to keep from falling, her face now completely drained of color. In the harsh projector light, she looked like a stranger. The warm, beloved Caroline Mitchell had vanished, replaced by someone I'd never seen before. Someone who looked small and terrified and completely exposed. "Turn it off," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please just turn it off." But I didn't have the remote anymore. She did, and she was too shocked to use it. The crowd began to stand, voices rising in anger and betrayal. 3 people were already on their phones, probably calling the police. Mrs. Henderson was openly weeping, staring at evidence that Mom had stolen her late husband's memorial fund. Finally, Mom managed to turn off the projector, but the damage was done. 200 people had seen documentation of her crimes. Her reputation wasn't just damaged, it was obliterated. "I can explain," Mom said, her voice shaking as she faced the crowd. "This is all a misunderstanding. Someone has manipulated these documents to make me look like a thief." Mr. Johnson stood up, his elderly frame trembling with rage. "Caroline, you opened credit cards in my father's name. He's 93 years old and suffering from dementia, and you stole his identity." Other voices joined in. People shouting about missing donations, forged signatures, stolen personal information. The woman they'd trusted with their money and their private details had betrayed them all. In the chaos, Mom's eyes found mine. She stared at me from across the room, and I saw the moment realization dawned. Her own daughter had orchestrated this public destruction. Her 15-year-old child had not only discovered her crimes, but had exposed them in the most humiliating way possible. I didn't look away. I couldn't. We stared at each other across that room full of people whose lives she'd ruined, and I saw something in her expression that I'd never seen before. Not anger, not even fear. Betrayal. She felt betrayed, by me. The absurdity of it should have made me laugh, but instead I felt tears streaming down my face. Because even now, even after everything, some small part of me had hoped she'd look at me with remorse, with understanding, with some acknowledgement that she'd brought this on herself. But she just looked at me like I was the monster. Like I'd taken something from her. Like I was the thief. Danny's small hand found mine, squeezing tight. "Lena," his voice was small and frightened. "What's happening? Is that about Mom?" "Yes," I whispered. "She's been stealing from people, from us, from everyone." "You did this." He looked at me with wide eyes. "You made the presentation." I nodded, unable to speak. For a moment, I thought he'd pull away. That he'd look at me the way Mom was looking at me, like I was the villain in this story. Instead, he squeezed my hand tighter. "Good," he said quietly. "She needed to be stopped." And just like that, the last knot of doubt in my chest loosened. I'd done the right thing. Even if it hurt. Even if it destroyed us. Even if I'd never be the same person I was before I made this choice. The police arrived within 20 minutes. She pointed at me as the officers approached. "She did this. My own daughter fabricated all of this because she's angry I wouldn't let her go to some conference. She's manipulated these documents to make me look guilty." One of the officers, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, looked at me. "Miss, did you create this presentation?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "But I didn't fabricate anything. Every document is real. Every email, every bank record, every text message, they're all from my mother's accounts. I can show you where I found them." "This is insane," Mom said, her voice rising to something like hysteria. "She's 15 years old. She's a child having a tantrum because I set boundaries. You can't possibly believe." "Ma'am,"